Sheriff Kevin Rambosk embodies the philosophy of service to others before self. It's this philosophy, along with community partnerships and the hard work and professionalism of his department, that has kept Collier County one of the safest counties in Florida. He's been in charge of the department in Collier County since 2009. His career with the county has spanned the past 45 years, when in 1978 he joined the police force here in Naples. Received his master's degree in business administration from Nova University and is a graduate of the FBI Academy. He is vice chair of the Substance Abuse Coalition of Collier County and co-chair of Southwest Florida Regional Domestic Security Task Force. During his career, he has received over a dozen awards of distinction for his leadership and humanitarian efforts. We are so privileged to have you here today, Sheriff Rambosk. Please join us in welcoming him.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to be here with you. First and foremost, I'm going to go out of order, which is probably going to mess me up, but Jennifer, fabulous job. And you know, I worked with Jennifer when she worked for the county, and we worked on cable television when it was new and up and coming, if that gives you any view on how long ago that was. So I'll talk. Yes, so we'll talk a little bit more about that before. Second more serious point is, Alina, you are fabulous as always. Alina is the success for victims that we wish for all persons, but more importantly, we want to prevent victimization from taking place. And I'm going to touch on what we've been doing for human trafficking. So first and foremost, I want to take an opportunity to thank you all for your trust and support of law enforcement, because without that, we would be like every other city in this country that's held under democratic rule, and we would be in the toilet. You know, I have a chance to give you a little update, and I will tell you that while the crime reporting system that we've been using for since 1971 is about to change, I can tell you our last year, and right now, since 1971, Collier County is at its lowest crime rate since that time. A fabulous place to be. And I need to recognize your deputies, the men and women who are out there 24/7 protecting everything we do, those in the jail that protect us so that we can all go home and sleep at night. And you know, some of you might have seen U.S. News and World Report during the summer had evaluated for the quality of life 150 metropolitan areas in the United States. And, you know, that includes healthcare and safety and atmosphere. And, you know, we rank in the top 10 of about everything in the world. Why? Because this is the best place in the world, right here, Collier County. So in U.S. News and World Report's review, they ranked safety. So we go to the report, we look at it, and Naples in the top 10 of about everything, and we can't find safety. And we said, well, what's wrong with that? We know we're a safe community. And one of our staff says, you're looking in the wrong place. I said, what do you mean? You're looking in the top 10. Go look at number 1. We were ranked number 1 safest metropolitan area in the United States of America, right here out of 150. Blessing and a curse, because now we're seeing a lot of people who want to come and live together with us and recreate with us. And that is going to be our biggest challenge. How do we maintain the lifestyle that we all love and why we came here to begin with? How do we keep that in the future? And again, we thank you for your support. I would talk about traffic normally, but that's so bad, I try not to talk about that. So I will say, though, that we have a great traffic enforcement unit. We're out there all the time working aggressive drivers as well as speeding and DUI. So anybody use Livingston Road for anything? All right, I'm not going to tell you we're out there a lot, and we're going to be out there a lot, okay? So just don't tell anybody that we're there, just you. But you know, we've got so many great things that have been going on in Collier County with regard to public safety. All of your public safety personnel, fire rescue, EMS, law enforcement, do a fabulous job, and they do it together. And that's really what makes us different than most other communities, because we don't try and compete. We work together with one another, support one another, keep one another safe, because the safer and the more we can work together, the safer you're going to be. And that is absolutely a primary goal. So a couple of highlights that I'd like to leave with you, and I think I'm going to leave, let's start with human trafficking. Because, you know, you would think, as many did years ago when we started to create our effort to fight human trafficking and make arrests for human trafficking. In fact, 8 to 10 years ago, after I came into office, I got questioned by a group that had seen a report of the number of arrests that we were making in Collier County for human trafficking. And it was right up there close to Miami and Tampa, and they said, "What's wrong in your county? You're making all these arrests." And I thought to myself, good question. And then I said, you know what the difference is? Because we've made a commitment to fight human trafficking and domestic violence, which really run together in a lot of respects. And we started making arrests. And yes, in the beginning it looked a little bad for us, but you know what? Human trafficking occurs throughout the United States and throughout the world. This is not a problem for any one community. And I'll tell you that with the help of many of you here, the Stedmans that are here, you heard about the training, the programs that we've worked on together, and the commitments that we've made to stop where this goes is critically important. And in fact, you know, in addition to having an exploitation unit, and Alina talked a little bit about those detectives that help look at victims in our county. You know, traditionally, years ago, law enforcement would look at not human trafficking, they would look at prostitution. And who would be looked at as the victim of that crime? It was talked about as a victimless crime. And who was the subject that law enforcement typically ran into, identified, and took action with? It was prostitutes. Well, I'm going to sit here and tell you, and I've told this, Alina's heard this many times, in our community, we have changed a long time ago the way we look at what was known as prostitution. And we look at the victims of human trafficking, because I'm going to tell you, what young lady would select human trafficking and prostitution as their career? Nobody. No one. They are dragged and drugged and chosen. Fortunately, in our community, they are not taken yet, but they are chosen and wined and dined. And that is what makes it so important for us to continue. Over the last 7 years, we've arrested 20 traffickers. We have rescued more than 73 victims. And we work with our shelter, we work with other organizations here, the David Lawrence Center, to try and separate those victims from the environment they're in. But I'll tell you, it's very, very difficult, and Elena's been helping us to understand more about how we make that connection, because even though we're able to disrupt it initially, sometimes we can't persuade the person that was dragged or drugged into this that we're there more to help them, and the shelter's there more to help them, and the David Lawrence Center is more to help them. We've also gone on one other path this year, and we are looking at, and actually we're well into it, it's not done yet, but a state statute that addresses illicit massage parlors. And, you don't think too much. Now, I'm not talking about the good, upstanding massage parlors. In fact, we have some support from them to say, no, we're not an illicit function, but, we started to see growth over the last 8 years. We had probably about 5 or 6 massage parlors that we believed were a problem. They are regulated by the state health department. They don't give a lot of authority to law enforcement. They do give us a little bit of authority to check criteria, identification, licensing, that kind of thing. But what we were finding is, fast forward to today, we wind up with 38 what we believe to be illicit massage parlors in Collier County. We know where they are, we surveil them, and we do everything that we can do to take action. But what we didn't have was the tool to get us in to ultimately make arrests and shut them down. So with the help of the Stedmans and others in here, we put together an ordinance, it began as an ordinance, it went to a state statute, we got people and support in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, and that is on its way through to being a new bill, which gives us a lot more authority. It's not exactly what we were looking for, but it gets us a lot further than where we were today. And I'll give you one example. Our Sergeant of Human Trafficking, Wade Williams, who does a fabulous job, was at a facility. They were doing the inspection, and he says to the manager, once they've checked everything they could check, they said, I have one more question for you. And she says, what's that? She says, can you tell me why these young ladies over here are here? Well, that's our support staff. Well, okay, why is your support staff wearing lingerie? So, we know what's going on. We need help. We're about to get, I believe, a statute that will help us, and we're going to continue that fight for human trafficking. Couple more things, and then I'll open it up to questions. School safety, a big challenge across the country. Parkland is 106 miles from where we stand. That was one of the most tragic events, that we've seen in Florida. And we're ultimately close. They are our neighbor. Broward County is our neighbor. And, each time there is an event throughout the United States, we look at what took place, we review our policies and procedures, we look at how we would have reacted. And I'm going to tell you something, that your professional trainers and staff have put together response plans, tactics, equipment that you afford and provide for us to do one thing, unlike Uvalde and unlike Parkland, and that is go to the gunfire and stop the threat. Because if they had done that, lives would have been saved. Your deputies do that. In fact, when we hire today, you are asked, can you go to the gunfire? Because if you cannot, and it doesn't matter whether it's in a school or whether it's in a business, if you can't do that, we understand it. We'll see if there's another role that you can play, or maybe you want to choose another career field. But we cannot be put in that position. But, by the time you call us, even with our training, even with our equipment, and the ability to stop a threat, we thought, that's too long. Most events occur within 3.5 minutes. And that, we have school deputies on every campus, but some of our campuses pretty large, 3,000 students. So it's even going to take a minute to even get there. So we took a different perspective and said, is there a way that we can build a plan that looks ahead of that 911 call of shots fired? And we've trained in crisis intervention. We have trained in mental health identification because that's all a part of all of this. And we put together a threat assessment program, and we did this 2 to 3 years ago, which we brought public last summer, and that identifies behavioral problems, it identifies threats, it identifies problems that we want to get to and refer people to the right and proper help before they have a problem. And we looked at, we thought this was a great program for us. It turns out that so did the National School Safety Advocacy Program and Council, because they selected your threat assessment program for school safety as the #1 school safety program in the country this past year. Congressman Diaz-Balart saw it, came over, we presented to him, and he wants to bring us up to Washington, D.C. to present it as a potential for a program that could be used by other agencies. So absolutely fabulous. I want to be able to tell you that we can 100% stop every crime that is occurring. We cannot. And I'll tell you something, you might say, well, none of that's ever going to happen here. I think that was said in almost every location. And this past week, we got an anonymous call that a subject was going to go to one of our schools and shoot it up. Our team went right into place. The anonymous reporter left. We tracked them down. We tracked back to the person who was alleged to have said what they were going to do. We found them. They're living at a local hotel. We knock on the door. We go into the hotel room, and there's a half a dozen weapons on the bed. And we talked to them. We made sure that they were purchased correctly, which they were. We had our mental health unit come in and do an evaluation. We contacted the state attorney's office to work together with us. In the end, there was no legal way we could do anything with regard to this person because we couldn't prove that they were the person that made the threat. So your deputies chose not to let it go, which was the appropriate thing. They tracked the subject overnight. Obviously, we made contact with the school, put people into the schools. We did everything we could, but we never lost sight of the subject anyway. During the investigation, another video surfaced, which was then provided to us, where threats were made, which raised the level of our concern and put us in place that we could take action with the Baker Act. We took the subject into custody under the Baker Act. We decided to tow their vehicle for safety, remove all their weapons and secure them for safety. And when we went into the car to do an inventory of property, multiple weapons, AK-7 style weapons, automatic weapons that were in the car ready to go. So the point of all that, the only way we keep things as safe as we're keeping is with everybody's help. When you, your kids, your friends, parents, because the initial call actually came from a parent. Imagine if they hadn't called, even anonymously. We need to tell one another. We need to tell law enforcement. We have no problem checking every single thing that you give us. And we will check it thoroughly and make sure that we don't wind up with the alternative should someone decide, oh, we didn't think it was important, or we didn't want to bother you. Last thing, fentanyl. We're about to experience over the next 3 to 5 years the worst drug epidemic this country has ever seen. Why? Because the introduction of fentanyl and all of its synthesized changes that are coming. Because already fentanyl is almost out of the picture. Now you have xylazine and tranq and a variety of other things that we are now starting to see. And oh yeah, by the way, guess where they are coming from? They're coming across the border because we have not successfully safeguarded our border. I'm going to tell you, and as I've told others, we can track drugs coming into this county to be sold directly from coming across the border. I sit on the National Sheriff's Association Border Security Committee. We have been fighting with not all administrations, but many, to try and secure the borders. And I'm going to tell you this as well. I sit with Southwest border sheriffs, and they give us updates as to what is occurring. And they are not what we're seeing on the nightly news. They are far worse. So they are putting fentanyl now, or in the future, one of its synthetics, in other drugs. So we have a big challenge. We have got to get back to our kids. We've got to get back to that 18 to 34 range, which is where we see a lot of our overdoses coming from, and let people know, you may think you're smoking a joint, but that joint is sprayed with fentanyl. And why are they spraying it with fentanyl? To suck you in. Marijuana is not going to addict you, not physiologically anyway, but fentanyl will. So you're always going to want to go back to your dealer and buy. So we have got to do something. We've got to do what we did years ago and get back into the origins of where everything is coming from. And of course, with fentanyl, all the precursors are coming from China, down to the cartels in Mexico. We've got to hit them hard. We're hitting them hard. Keep your eye on the news next week. You'll see what we're doing about it. Can't talk to you. Open it up to questions. Yes, ma'am. Yes, constitutional carry. I fully and completely support it. It allows you to carry a firearm without having to register yourself to get a permit. The important things to remember, though, there are still restrictions on where you can carry the firearm. You can't carry it in government buildings. You can't take it on school property. You can't. The same restrictions that were in place are still in place. What will it do for us? I think it will actually make us stronger, because if you're a criminal, are you going to take the chance that somebody is not going to defend themselves in the state of free Florida? No, you're not. And why should the government be tracking us? Unless we commit a crime. Fine, I'll track you. No problem. But don't track me because I'm a good, upstanding citizen of the community. So anyway, yes, very important. I will say one thing. I would ask only one thing. If you haven't had training and you buy a firearm, please go get it. You can come to our range on a Saturday morning, tell them you don't know how to use it, you'd like to learn. We have courses. There are a lot of other courses out there. And please buy a lock and lock it up. Do not leave it in your car, because that's what's going to affect us in law enforcement. When people steal property from your car, we'll face it in the street sometime at 2 a.m. Thank you for the question. Very important. Yes, sir. Will it affect the wait times? No, wait times are going to remain the same. That process is still in place. Yes, sir.
I want to thank you very much for the hard work you're doing and also your mental health deputies that are making a big impact. You might want to explain to the crowd that the xylazine and tranq you were talking about, are not affected at all by the anti-overdose drugs, and also they can actually cause people, sorry for lunch, rot apart.
Yeah, thanks. Very, very important. We are getting now out, we have provided Narcan to all of our deputies. And, we debated years ago over that, but we were starting to get so many overdoses. We said, well, you know what? While we believe that people should not be using drugs, we don't want to get to a location on a medical call and not be able to assist. So we went ahead and we bought Narcan, and 2 points out of that are really important. We have now used Narcan on 4 of your deputies.
What?
While they were responding to emergency calls and providing first aid, they ingested fentanyl and they went out.
What?
Number one. So I'm going to tell you something which I haven't made public at all, but I'm going to tell you in that 3 to 5 year period, we should all have Narcan in our first aid kit at home. That's the way it's going to go. And I always looked at that as a negative, but you know what? It's not, because if you have friends or you have kids or grandkids and they bring friends over and they get into something that they thought was not a problem and got into it, I mean, your last deputy went to a domestic violence incident and helped carry a crock pot out to the car for the domestic violence victim to get her out of the house, and we're still not sure where it came from. That's all they did, went out. Second thing is, now with the polydrug overdose problem and the synthetics, Narcan, number one, is weakening because everything else is being strengthened, and you're having all the synthetics that are added into it. So there is forthcoming a new, I'll call it a new Narcan, that's not what it is, but we are looking at the next level up because even for us, the last deputy took 2 Narcans to save their life. So that's why when it gets to the point that your deputies are going out, we each have to support and make sure that our families are taken care of, even if it's by accident. Lisa.
With this knowledge about the Narcan, of course, I'll go home and talk to my 12-year-old, but is there a way that the department is communicating with the school district to let children know that it's not like back in the day when we were younger, a joint can kill you, like you had said, if it's laced with something? So is there a way that you're communicating with the school district?
Yes, we have a working relationship already with the school district. We changed our programming in the school system and went to the LEAD program, Law Enforcement Against Drugs and Violence, because the prior program, although it was good for its time, could not keep up with the vaping and fentanyl, and things were moving so fast that we looked at this program. I was actually just placed on the board of directors for this organization. So we are going to expand training from what we have always had in the 5th grade, and we're going to start making it throughout 12 grades, kindergarten through 12, age appropriate only. And we're going to be doing somewhat like PSAs with the school system. But you know what? Here's where we need your help. We've looked at all different ways, and while I can sit up here and give you information and you would understand it and have concern about it, what teenager is going to listen to me? So we are actually now looking for notable people, trying to get funding to bring them in as spokespersons, people that they can relate to, other young people that they can relate to, and we will have We're going to start with basic information that we've got right away, and by the next start of the school year, we're going to have, hopefully, with the school support, a whole new program to make sure that we provide information at all levels of the school system. So yes, we're working on that right now.
Thank you, Sheriff. Every great tragedy we have with guns is automatic that our liberals talk about taking our guns. That's because the founding fathers knew that they said every man, woman, and child should be armed to fight a tyrannical government. And if we don't have a tyrannical government now, what do we have? I wish we could get our conservative spokesman or people in the government like Brian, but I can't get a chance to talk to him. If you do, please tell them they have to turn the conversation around and tell them that the big problem is mental health. Every one of these people have had mental health problems. I've kept track of it. This young man or woman, whatever it was, that just did the bank, they had a mental health problem. But these are the same people. The liberals are the same ones back in the 60s that wanted all the mental health facilities closed, and they did a good job of it. And now we have to resurrect that because they're responsible for this, not guns. Not guns. And I hope we can get that message out to our people.
So let me just tell you, and I've told groups before, I will never come to take your guns. That's number one. The only way the Constitution allows me to do anything relatively remotely is that I have to have a court order. And there are some safeguards in place that we use so that if we identify you should not be having in your possession a firearm, we will go to court and seek a court order to do that. So yes, we're paying attention to that. Yes, we're using what is put in place, but those same things that you were talking about led into the creation of our threat assessment program, because we saw that Cruz over in Broward County was in the jail 34 times, and nobody seemed to know why I was there. Why is somebody in your jail 34 times? By about the third time in our jail, we find out why you keep coming back. And of course, we have clinicians through our mental health unit in our jail to identify potential problems. And we make sure if people that may have a problem don't just walk out the back door when they've completed their sentence. We hook them up with the David Lawrence Center. We'll even give them a ride there. We have got to track from when we release to get them into a place that can help and keep an eye on them. But commit a violent crime, you're going to jail. Yes, ma'am.
I happen to be married and work with a criminologist, and overwhelmingly what we see with the cases that come across our desk is that the sheriff departments across the United States seem to be the first contact for all these mentally ill people, because there's no other place out there where they're being taken care of and helped. And so many, every time there's a jail suicide, 99% of the time it's a mentally ill person. Or somebody going out and murdering people, as this woman over here mentioned. They're all mentally ill. When is our society going to realize that that's at the base of so much of what's going on? It's mental illness, and we're ignoring the mentally ill.
We agree with you, and we actually identified that 12 years ago when we started to train we've trained 1,400 of your deputies in the Memphis Police Model Crisis Intervention Training Program to identify those types of problems. But more to your point, jails throughout the United States typically are the largest mental health facility in a community. Hey, you know, as much as I'm supportive of getting nonviolent, non-criminal people to get help, you don't want me treating you for mental health problems. You want professionals to do it. We've already seen that. We already have put that in place. But you know, there are 3,000 sheriffs plus sheriff's offices out throughout this country, and they run most of the jails. And that should be a part of every single jail program that's out there. In fact, I think every law enforcement officer in the nation should complete the 40-hour Memphis Model Police training course. And again, we did it a long time ago. All of your deputies, all your police officers are trained, and we train the new ones that are coming in because they do absolutely make a difference.
I don't have a question, but just a quick comment. I've been coming down here since 2009 when I retired. And every year I stay a little bit longer and a little bit longer because I want to tell you that when I'm here, I can walk out my door at night, I feel safe. When I drive around the city at night, I feel safe. I can attend an populated event down here, and I feel safe. I can't say that when I'm up north all the time. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Well,
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I know I'm getting the hook, so I got to go. But, you know, it really takes all of us. And I'll tell you why. Out of 3/4 of the last number of motor vehicle thefts we've had, key fobs were left in the car. So let me just ask you, whether it be key fobs or property, you know, you might not have to lock things up because we are in a great community, but lock them up anyway because it dissuades people and they will go to another county. Thank you very much, everybody.